On a stormy night, Jack asked his dad to read his favorite tale, A Legend of Giants. Dad started to narrate. Years ago, some monks found a special bean seed. It sprouted a beanstalk that grew very, very tall. The curious monks began to climb it. They believed they would discover the heaven door once they reached the summit. Still, the monks found something dreadful instead, malevolent giants who resided in the platform, a floating place amidst heaven and earth. The giants descended to earth with the aid of the beanstalk. King Eric, the monarch of the Cluster Kingdom, then directed his monks to devise a strategy to defeat the giants. The monks fused a colossal heart with magical power to create King Eric's enchanted crown. The crown compelled the giants to submit to his authority. King Eric ordered the giants to return to their original location, the Old Alley. Once they climbed down the mammoth beanstalk, it was severed. The world was serene once more. After a few years, the old King Eric expired, and the magic crown and remaining magical beans were buried with him. After hearing the tale, Jack desired to join the royal guard as a knight to combat monsters. His father stated that giants merely existed in fables and were not real. Meanwhile, Crown Princess Isabel from Kingdom of Cloister Realm heard about giants from her mother, who informed her that the chief of the giant clan was a double-headed giant named Fallen. Isabel wasn't scared as she believed it was only a story. Her mother suggested it might be true, as Isabel's great-grandfather was King Eric. Isabel would rule the kingdom one day, and her mother wanted her to do it. Her mother wished for Isabel to become a sensible queen and exhibit love for her people. After his father's death, Jack moved in with his uncle in a small house. As they ran out of money, his uncle asked Jack to sell their horse. Jack took the horse to the capital, where Cloister's royal palace was situated. When he arrived at the city center's marketplace, Jack offered the horse and cart to passersby. Jack then watched a puppet show about King Eric and a giant. Jack entered to listen to the tale. His attention was diverted by a beautiful woman next to him. When she felt observed, the woman turned her head. Suddenly, a group of intoxicated men started to mock her. The lady left but was pursued by drunkards. Jack, who sympathized, attempted to assist her but was assaulted. Royal guards arrived on horseback, and she mounted one of the horses. All knelt. Jack turned and saw that Elmont, the captain of the royal guard, had collected Princess Isabel. Jack turned and saw that Elmont, the captain of the royal guard, had collected Princess Isabel. Jack realized that the lady he assisted before was actually the princess. Jack was bewildered after the princess group departed as his cart was missing. Lord Roderick, the king's advisor and Isabel's future spouse, has a deputy named Wick in the palace. Roderick and Wick walked to the garden. They met a weird-acting monk on the way, but Roderick disregarded him. Roderick was then surprised to find the park disorganized. He looked for the book where he kept the magic beans, but they were missing. He then inspected King Eric's crown hidden in the pot, which was still there. Roderick, who discovered that the monk had recently stolen the beans, instructed Wick to shut the city gates and apprehend the monk. Once the city gates were closed, Wick began searching for the monk. The monk concealed himself behind a wall and observed Jack attempting to sell his horse. Despite having no money, the monk was interested in purchasing the horse and, as collateral, traded Jack some beans. He assured Jack that these were no ordinary beans. The monk told Jack to give the beans to the abbot, who would swap the beans for lots of money. Jack didn't trust it, but the monk guaranteed he would never lie. He gave Jack the beans and instructed him always to keep them away from water. After that, the monk fled by riding Jack's horse and attempted to locate and escape, but was eventually apprehended. Jack went back home carrying the beans given to him by the monk. His uncle was angry because Jack brought home useless beans instead of money. They needed the money to fix the leaking roof. The angry uncle threw the beans down while Jack picked them up, but one fell onto the ground. Uncle Jack gathered some items to sell and left, instructing Jack to stay home. In the palace, Isabel's father, King Branwell, scolded her for leaving without permission. He was concerned about Isabel's safety since she was the future queen of the Kingdom of Cloister. Isabel brought up her match with Roderick, who was significantly older than her. Still, she firmly declined the match and expressed her desire to marry someone she loves. The king also opposed her opinion. The king insisted that Isabel must marry Roderick under all circumstances. Isabel, who was disconsolate, departed from her father. She absconded from the palace at night and rode her horse in a heavy rain. Far away, a monk in prison inquired about the location of the stolen beans, but he refused to disclose it. An enraged Roderick promptly murdered the monk. At night, Isabel absconded from the palace and rode her horse in the heavy rain. Amidst the thunder, Isabel lost her way. Isabel saw a light in the distance and sought refuge at its source, Jack's home. Jack welcomed her inside and recognized her as Princess Isabel, whom he had encountered in the city that day. They conversed, and Isabel expressed interest in Jack's collection of storybooks. Jack gave Isabel a storybook about giants that his late father used to read as a child. Isabel happily accepted it because her mother also used to read the story. When exposed to rainwater without Jack and Isabel realizing it, magically small leaves sprouted from the beans that had fallen on the ground. Suddenly, the house shook, and a giant creeping tree trunk appeared. Jack tried to assist Isabel, who was hit by a table. However, he was thrown out of the house. After escaping, he could run out, but a tree trunk had closed the door. Isabel shouted for assistance, and the tree caused Jack's house to rise. Jack quickly grabbed an axe and climbed onto his house. Using the axe, he chopped the trunk that was blocking the door. Though he successfully opened the door, he lost his footing and fell. Isabel tried to hold on to Jack's hand, but her grip was weak, causing her to fall and lose her bracelet. The following day, Jack woke up to find King Bromwell standing before him. He discovered that many people were searching for Isabel. The king inquired about why Jack had Isabel's bracelet. Jack described the events from the previous night. The king instructed Elmont to assemble a team and search for Isabel in the giant tree. Roderick insisted on joining the team to prove his love for Isabel. Jack also said he would go on the mission because he was the only witness who knew what happened last night and could explain everything. The king then allowed Jack to join Isabel's rescue mission. They started climbing the tree, with Elmont inviting some of his men connected by ropes tying their bodies. One night, a bodyguard slipped and died in heavy rain, leaving a group of people hanging from the rope. Instead of assisting them, Roderick instructed Wick to cut the cord. As a result, the soldiers fell, and only 6 people survived. When Elmont, who was above and unaware of the situation, asked about what happened below, Roderick falsely claimed that the rope broke suddenly and caused everyone to fall. Jack woke up in the morning above the clouds. They were amazed to see a plane floating in the sky. Next, they entered a cave that resembled a monster's head. Elmont discovered Isabel's footprints there, and they decided to follow them. While Elmont and his team went forward, Roderick and Wick stayed back to hold Jack. Roderick asked Jack to give him the rest of the beans. Jack, who was scared, eventually handed them over. Roderick asked Jack to provide him with the rest of the beans, but unknown to Roderick, Jack still had one magic bean left. Jack hid the bean in his necklace. Elmont saw a sign made by Isabel on a tree in the forest. They followed the movement and went into the forest. The king was confused at seeing a group of climbing soldiers falling. Later, while wandering in the woods, Isabel's trace was lost. It appears that something unusual occurred in the upper sections. A problem with Isabel seemed to have happened, which Elmont likewise noticed. Jack discovered the book he had presented to Isabel the previous night. Jack informed Elmont that a large force was hoisting Isabel upwards as he noticed snapped branches. Elmont instructed them to divide into 2 groups. Foe, Roderick, and Wick would venture along the plateau, while Elmont, Craw, and Jack would explore the river's banks. They must stay alert since their parents' warning could be genuine. The giant truly exists. In the woodland, Craw and Jack attempted to capture a sheik they encounter but become entangled in a harsh trap. Jack tries to sever the rope while Elmont cuts it loose from the trap's end. Craw escaped from the net. Suddenly, they heard an unfamiliar sound drawing nearer. Crow instructed Jack to emerge swiftly. Following this, Craw concealed himself behind a tree, whereas Elmont hid behind a large rock. However, upon witnessing the enormous figure approaching, Jack, who had recently evaded a trap, became frightened and had no opportunity to locate a place of concealment. Eventually, Jack plunged into the water. The giant caught the sheep near Jack. Because of the smell, the giant relocated. Craw, terrified, made a run for it, but the giant effortlessly apprehended him. Elmont endeavored to assist Craw, but the giant rendered him insensible with a kick. Then, the giant took Elmont and Craw into the woods. Jack trailed the giant from the rear. Meanwhile, Roderick and Wick feigned sight of Isabel below. The inquisitive foe approached. Roderick shoved him to the ground without warning, and Wick chortled. Suddenly, a giant emerged and devoured Wick. Another giant materialized with a desire to capture Roderick. Roderick swiftly opened his bag and retrieved King Eric's enchanted crown. A giant inside the giant's base questioned Isabel about her arrival, but she declined to share. The giant inquired if she had arrived with someone else. Isabel asserted that she had reached unaccompanied, but the giant remained doubtful due to his knowledge of Isabel's relation to King Eric. Despite the time that had passed, the giant still remembered King Eric's odor, which he sensed in Isabel. The giant who had asked was the chieftain of the giants named Fallen. He was the double-headed giant. After that, Fallon exhibited Isabel to the other giants. Fallon was jubilant since they could finally take revenge on King Eric, who had banished them from Earth. Subsequently, another giant appeared, bringing Elmont and Craw. Fallon asked Crow how they had reached there, but Craw vehemently declined to tell him. An incensed Fallon then devoured the crown. Jack snuck into the giant headquarters, hoping not to get caught. Upon entering the room, he was shocked by what he saw. Meanwhile, Fallon still threatened to eat Elmont and Isabel if they didn't show him the way down. One giant, Fum, didn't accept this because he was the first to find Isabel. Fallon angrily struck Fum with his weapon, but Fum was not scared since Fallon was not their king. Suddenly, Roderick arrived with King Eric's crown, fashioned from the heart of a giant. The giants knelt before Roderick, one by one. Isabel and Elmont were thrilled to see Roderick and his arrival to set them both free. However, Roderick declined to say he would help the giants return to Earth instead. Roderick aimed to become an unbeatable ruler, so he instructed the giants to attack the Cloister Kingdom, followed by all the other kingdoms on Earth. He advised them to prepare themselves as they would commence their descent on Earth the following day with the aid of their giant army. Roderick aimed to become an unbeatable ruler, so he instructed the giants to attack the Cloister Kingdom, followed by all the other kingdoms on Earth. Jack walked through the giant's treasure storage room and heard Elmont's voice from the other side of the building. He quickly ran towards it and found himself in the giant's kitchen. There, he discovered that the giant chef had plans to roast Elmont. Jack attempted to rescue Isabel but was unsuccessful. Later, Jack approached Elmont while the giant was distracted. Jack tried to cut the flower that bound Elmont's body with a knife, but the giant refused. Jack then handed over his knife to Elmont so he could flee. The giant proceeded to take Elmont into the furnace. Meanwhile, Jack climbed the rope and arrived at the knife storage. The giant then took Isabel. As the giant was about to execute Isabel, Jack plunged a knife into its back. The vast creature was in immense agony and perished after crashing into the wall. Elmont, grappling to make it out of the furnace, managed to survive with much effort. All three of them came out alive. Meanwhile, King Bramwell inquired about the opinion of General Entin regarding the demolition of the colossal beanstalk. General Entin was uncertain because he still had faith in Isabel's rescue. Meanwhile, King Branwell was concerned that the giants might descend. Upstairs, Jack tended to Isabel's hurt hand. Isabel held herself responsible for all that had occurred. Jack also pledged to rescue Isabel. Jack urged Isabel to relax, noting that they would not have known about Roderick's treacherous plan if she had not fled. They need to descend without harm because Isabel would ascend to the throne and someday improve the world. They proceeded towards the enchanted beanstalk to make their way down. Upon arrival at the cliff, they spotted a slumbering giant. Roderick had tasked the giant to stand guard at the exit. Upon witnessing the sleeping giant, Jack devised a plan. He placed a beehive inside the giant's helmet, resulting in immediate and agonizing screams. The giant stumbled towards the edge and removed his helmet, eventually succumbing to Jack's clever tactic. Elmont that informed him that he would remain on guard duty to thwart Roderick's attempts to reclaim King Eric's crown. Elmont requested that Jack assist Isabel in climbing down from the tree. Subsequently, Jack surrendered his knife to him, while Elmont presented Jack with the Royal Guard's badge. By doing so, Jack has obtained the status of an official guard member. Everyone below was scared as a giant fell from above. To everyone's amazement, the giant legend was true. King Bromwell instructed his troops to fall the tree. The king assumed the giant slipped while descending. Despite sacrificing Isabel to safeguard the kingdom, the king had no choice but to bring down the magic tree. He took up his sword and began to hack at the tree. The soldiers followed him to cut it down. Meanwhile, Elmont was awoken by the booming noise of the approaching giants above. Roderick appeared and produced a pouch of enchanted beans. Elmont swiftly assaulted Roderick, causing the bag of magic beans to tumble. They both entered the cavern. The giants dug a hole to come to Roderick's aid. In the cavern, Roderick dropped Elmont's knife and trapped him. With his mouth, Elmont regained the knife and launched another offensive against Roderick. But Roderick pushed Elmont to the cliff's edge and hurt Elmont's hands as he grasped the rocks. Elmont retaliated by injuring Elmont's leg and thrusting the knife into Roderick's chest. Roderick succumbed to his injuries as Elmont limped to remove the knife from his chest. Unfortunately, Elmont was too late to claim King Eric's crown. Fallon had already taken it first and wore it on both fingers, earning the giant's respect. Below, the trunks of the enchanted tree broke off one after the other. The tree started to fall. Jack and Isabel noticed above that the tree would collapse soon. Elmont, who also realized it, immediately leaped onto the tree to come down. Jack then severed the roots of the tree. He instructed Isabel to hold on tight to him. Jack and the other person started swinging and jumping. They both landed safely in a pile of hay. The end of the fallen magic tree reached the capital, where Elmont threw himself into the river. Isabel met her father and told him about Roderick's betrayal. The king apologized for previously forcing Isabel to marry Roderick upon hearing this. Isabel then revealed that Jack had saved her, for which the king showed gratitude by presenting him with a gift. Before Jack left, he gave Isabel his book as a souvenir. Fallen found a bag of magic beans that had dropped and threw them into the river. It resulted in a magical bean tree growing. Fallen urgently instructed the giant army to climb down the tree. The giants began to descend to Earth. While looking at their reflection in the water, Jack noticed the giants approaching Earth with the magic tree. Jack rode his horse quickly to warn everyone. Eventually, the giants successfully landed on Earth. Jack yelled to Isabel's group, but they were too far away for her to hear. A monk spotted the giants and rang the bell to alert everyone. Jack finally caught up with Isabel's group, but the giants were already upon them. The giants were hungry for human prey and attacked the royal guards. One giant, Fallen, even devoured General Entin. The gatekeepers saw King Bromwell's entourage approaching and began to prepare to close the gates. Elmont ordered them to wait until the entourage entered. Elmont commanded his soldiers to pour asphalt into the river, causing it to catch fire and burn around the city. After the king and Isabel entered the gate, Elmont instructed his troops to raise the bridge, which proved challenging as Jack was seen outside, mounted on his horse. The bridge was lifted higher with great effort until Jack finally reached the gate. Fallen attempted to climb the bridge but was shot by the royal troops and fell into a flaming river. Fallen attempted to climb the bridge but was shot by the royal troops and fell into a burning river. While struggling with the fire, Fallen asked for help from other giants, but they remained silent. As a result, he drowned. Giant Fum instructed the other giants to forget about Fallen and proceed with their mission to breach the gate. Surprisingly, Fallen survived and swam to safety after reaching the river. Fallen attempted to climb the bridge but was shot by the royal troops and fell into a flaming river. Elmont went to Isabel and the king. He told the king that Roderick had died but failed to get the magic crown. Then a large bell fell and two hooks appeared, which opened the gate. The king instructed Isabel to go to the top of the tower and light an alarm beacon to warn other kingdoms. Isabel left with Jack right away. Meanwhile, Elmont and his soldiers attempted to protect the entrance. Within the palace, Isabel took a shortcut alongside the waterway. Unusual water bubbles emerged from the water. Meanwhile, outside, the mechanism that rotates the gate rope was destroyed. Elmont and his troops consequently launched rope arrows to retrieve the gate. The monarch aided in tugging the giants and hurled flaming arbors into the realm. The tree caused casualties among the soldiers. As Isabel and Jack prepared to ascend the tower, an entity abruptly emerged from beneath within the palace. Isabel and Jack quickly hid. The king and his troops tried to defend the gate despite the giant's attack. A creature emerged from underground within the palace. It was Fallen. He was still fixated on eating Isabel, a descendant of King Eric. Because of his acute sense of smell, Fallen could locate Isabel and Jack's hiding spot. The two fled up the stairs, but Fallen caught Isabel with his hand. Fallen planned to devour Isabel without delay. Jack grabbed an axe and leaped, but Fallen swiftly caught him. She was about to feast on Jack. However, he then recalled the enchanted beans in his sack. He retrieved the beans and put them in Fallen's mouth. All of a sudden, Fallen sensed something peculiar happening in her body. He hurled Jack and Isabel away. The magic bean tree sprouted through Fallen's body. She threw Jack and Isabel as well. A bean tree with magic started to grow inside Fallen's body. The magical beanstalk broke Fallen's body into pieces. Meanwhile, Fum and the giant army got through the palace gate. Elmont urged the king to go to a secure location, but the king declined. The king insisted on battling with his army. The giants entered the kingdom, and everyone was surprised to witness a magic bean tree grow inside the palace and destroy it. While the king and his troops were preparing to face the giant attack, the other giants threw away their weapons and knelt when Jack arrived. Wearing King Eric's magic crown, Jack instructed the giants to return to their home. Consequently, the magic bean tree was cut down. In brief, Isabel and Jack wed and became parents to 2 children. As time passed, King Eric's enchanted crown underwent various improvements. The giant's realm is shown to still exist above London in the modern day. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below, and if you liked the video, please like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you in the next video.